Welcome to the Counselling Tutor Podcast, the must-listen-to podcast for students of counselling and psychotherapy. Here are your hosts, Rory Lees-Oakes and Ken Kelly.
Hello and welcome to episode 78 of the Counselling Tutor Podcast with me, Rory Lees-Oakes, and with me in our ever-expanding parallel process, see what I did there, is my good friend and fellow practitioner, Ken Kelly. How you doing, Ken?
I am very well. Ever-expanding parallel process. Sounds like an episode of Star Trek, but it isn't. It is episode 78 of the Counselling Tutor Podcast. What can you expect from today's episode? Packed with value for you. We're going to be kicking off, keeping to the theme of the time. So there's a lot of assignments that are being written at the moment. And the first thing we're going to be looking at is using quotations, quotes in your assignments, the importance of that. And we'll be sharing some nice reference links with you as well today. And Rory, we're going to be diving into practice matters today, into the cool waters that are practice matters. And you're going to be looking at a tricky topic, and it can be tricky for the counsellor, and specifically when you're in placement, you're new, just going out, and it's when the client doesn't return. They just disappear. They come to a session, leave, and you never see them again. Really important topic. Can you give us a taster of that, Rory?
Yeah, I'm going to be talking about maybe what's left for practitioners when clients don't return, and certainly, you know, the reflections of students who this happens to, and you know, maybe ways of thinking about it. A few observations in 15 years of practice, basically.
Great topic, and we're going to be closing off episode 78 today looking at getting assignments referred. That is a horrible topic. Even just saying it, Rory, it brings up a feeling in me. Assignment and referred. And I know during my journey, I certainly had assignments referred. It's that kind of time where we kind of get our work back that we've put so much effort and energy into, and it comes back and it has been referred, and we have to revisit that. So we're going to be looking at that topic a little more in depth. But kicking us off, our starter today is those quotations. So you're writing your assignment paper, and we're called on to kind of take quotes from the theorists and bring that into our assignments. Any thoughts on that topic, Rory?
Yeah, well, look, the first thing is why do tutors like to see quotes? And the reason we like to see quotes is because it shows that you have done some reading around the subject. And you know, a lot of the learning is done outside class when you're doing your assignments. Mm-hmm. There's usually a book list or reading list, and the idea is that you at least read some of it. So the first thing I would say is that if you are doing an assignment now and you're thinking about quotes, what I would say is go to the back of books. Any academic book, you really start at the back and in the index. Look at the subject you're studying. Find that name, go to the page, and then have a look. And also, I think the quotes can really reinforce your own writing. So if you're writing something from your experience, certainly for those doing level 5, level 6, and you're writing something about your experience, you can then put a quote in that is the experience of someone who's published and is well known. That, I think, makes a big impact on an assignment. You're saying, this is what I found, but also, hey, look what Rogers said.
I like that. And we've spoken about referencing before, and referencing and quoting are different slightly, aren't they, Rory? Can you kind of differentiate between what a reference would be and what a quote would be?
Yes. So if you're doing what's called in-text referencing, you might say, you might talk about, say, empathy, and then say, Rogers, in a way of being, states that empathy is. And then you can put either an in-text referencing, or you can use the quote. So an in-text reference is where you're referencing what you've read. A quote really is, I think, to just reinforce and to make your work stand out. You know, and it's almost like the highlight of your assignment. If you put a quote in, it's like the highlight of your assignment. You're saying, look, this is the important thing, as you know, Rogers or Byrne or whoever you're studying. Is writing to them, you know. So, yeah, really important to use in-text referencing to show that you've been reading and you're drawing from the literature. A quote, as I say, just kind of underpins it all. It puts an underline under it. That's what I'd say.
I like that. I like that very much. And I did say that we share a reference with you, and we've just started something brand new on counsellingtutor.com, and we've added a quotes section that we're going to be building out as we go. So we've started with Carl Rogers, and you can find that by just going to today's show notes. And where you will find those is you just go to counsellingtutor.com, click on the very top menu bar and go to podcasts, and go on down to episode 78, today's episode, and right within the show notes will be the link, and it will take you through to the quotes section that we've just started. And it's basically taking the quotes, putting a nice graphic to them so you can share that if you wish to, and you've got the actual quote there and the theorist that made that quote. Quotes for me are kind of the gems that have shaken to the top of their theories and that they've written in their books over time. Quotes are little bits that people have taken and said, you know what, that really resonates with me. I know that if you listen to our back catalogue of podcasts, you're going to hear a fair number of quotes from Rory, from myself, that we will mention from time to time when a topic comes up. It's kind of a quote is something that is relevant at a certain time. And as you say, Rory, having those quotes in your assignment, it gives it glitter. It is those little gems that kind of shine out, and it's nice for the marker as well to see a quote here and there.
It is, and one play I think on quotes. There's a lot of quotes that are just taken out of context because they read quite nice. If you are using a quote, try and find out. You'll have to find out which book or periodical or journal it's from, and try and have a look at the entire quote within the page, because there are a few quotes. I can think of a Rogers quote that is taken totally out of context. And it's I trust in my experience for me is the highest authority. You see it all the time. And actually it's just a little section taken out of a whole page of a way of being. And actually it's totally out of context. And I used to say to learners, you've not read the book because you've taken it out of context, and actually that's not what he meant. So reading the book is always useful. If you're going to use a quote, try and find the book it's from and read it in context. It brings a new meaning to the work, I think.
I like what you're saying there. And we talk about authority referencing when you're coming to write your assignments, when you're coming to do any academic work. And we've mentioned before, maybe Wikipedia is not a good place to go if you're writing a counselling assignment and you want to bring a bit of theory in. And the same is true of quotes. There are many sites out there, and their business is to scrape the internet, collect little bits of quotes and put them out because they are shareable and they're going to get people linking in. They use them as, I guess, what's the word? Clickbait, Rory,
yes,
to get the visits to the site. And that is why at Counselling Tutor we are building this new quote section where you can have a trusted source of quotes that are not taken out of context, and we are trying where we can to reference where the quotes came from as well, so that you can go and read around those and of course pop that into the bibliography of your assignment.
Yeah, or your reference list.
Reference list. Indeed.
Yeah, bibliography is what you use to quotes. Reference list is what you've used to underpin your work. So, quotes, really, really good thing. And I think also that if you have a good quote, it really can link in to how you feel about the theory. You know, a lot of people I've taught through the years, when they talk about the theory, they actually talk about a quote. To really, you know, almost like a metaphor. We've covered those in the podcast before. A link, a link. It's really useful. So quotes.
I like it. So I have a call to action, something to challenge you to do here. You're listening to this. Why not go through to our Facebook page? Because this is where we get our topics from. And if you're not a member of the Facebook page, please come and join. There are thousands and thousands of like-minded students and tutors of counselling from all around the world, and we share ideas there. And there is a thread on what is your favorite quote. Put in what your favorite quote is, reference where that is from, and we may lift your quote and research it, make it into a beautiful graphic, and add that to the quotes section, the new quotes section in Counselling Tutor. So you can form part of Counselling Tutor. You can be an author by suggesting one of the quotes. I guess it's not really an author, is it? It would need to be your own stuff if you were an author. But there it is. So go onto Facebook, put in the word Counselling Tutor. We're right at the top. Knock on the door and come on in. We would love to have you. So moving on, and we're moving on to that matters, and that matters is practice. It's called Practice Matters, and we're going to be looking at clients, Rory, that never return.
We are, and it's a very delicate subject, I think. Sometimes we have clients that, they come to us, we build a good therapeutic relationship, and then they just don't come back. And I'm going to be talking a little bit about things to think about, things to consider, and also a little self-care around clients who don't return for the therapist.
Without any further ado, it is Practice Matters.
Practice Matters.
As a student, I remember all too well sitting in the therapy room, alone, reading a book or writing my assignments because my client had not turned up, or as we say in the counselling world, DNA'd. I also recall looking at my counselling log, hoping that I would accrue the requisite client hours to be able to finish the course at the end of the academic year. The times I paid for supervision only to discuss the one or two clients I'd seen that month, while wondering if working 2 jobs and having beans on toast 3 times a week was really good for my mental health and physical well-being. It was around this time I began reading The Road Less Travelled by M. Scott Peck, which starts off with the pithy observation, "Life is difficult. This is a great truth, one of the greatest truths. It is a great truth because once we truly see this truth, we transcend it. Once we truly know that life is difficult, once we truly understand and accept it, then life is no longer difficult, because once it's accepted, the fact that life is difficult no longer matters." I found this truth a great help. It started to shape my thinking around the reasons and my feelings around clients that did not turn up or never returned. Like most therapists who have practiced continually for a long period of time, 15 years in my case, I've come to realise there are many reasons for clients not returning. Here are some taken from conversations I've had with both clients, supervisors, practice managers, and people I've met on my travels since becoming qualified. Health reasons: having to work overtime to pay the bills, having to look after children or relatives, not being ready for counselling, not being able to pay the bus fare to the agency, feeling fear or shame, having to move house. Sometimes one session is enough. Just to be heard and offload can help someone cope and keep going. Don't underestimate transference. You can never be sure if you remind a client of someone from their past. It's worth remembering that sometimes just putting an hour a week aside for counselling is a luxury a client cannot afford. Frustrating as it is, the upside is if you do gain a whole hour, you can read a book, make notes for your assignments, or even go for a walk. One other test that non-attending clients ask of us is to consider unconditional positive regard. We should extend it to those who DNA. Why? Because we never know what's going on in other people's lives.
Thank you, as always, Rory. It's that one Practice Matters topic that you've covered that it's almost a guaranteed. You're going to have, if you go into placement, if you go into practice, a time when you build that relationship with a client and they just disappear. They don't come back again. So really, really important information there. And of course, Rory has made a super duper handout. We call them Rory's super duper handouts, and that is available from the show notes page. And you can get that by going to counsellingtutor.com, clicking on the podcast tab, go to episode 78. You can download that from within the page. Alternatively, if you are a member of our paid for service, which is called the Counselling Study Resource or Handouts Vault, then you can actually log into the Handouts Vault, and that has already been added for you. And if you're wondering what is this paid for service of which I speak, we give you information on that at the end of today's program. But let's move on to our next topic, and that is getting assignments referred. I almost want to do a dramatic piano dun 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 here, Rory.
Yes, it's amazing, isn't it? The transferences that come with that. I'm sure there'll be people listening to this who are throwing their hands in the air or having their head in their hands. Yeah, getting assignments referred. And I'll let you into a little secret that when I did my counselling qualification, I came really with no qualifications worth taking to a job interview. Me and school didn't get on very well, I seem to remember. And I started quite late in life. I think I was in my 40s. And I got every single assignment returned to me, every single one. And when I did my teaching qualification, which was a year after I qualified, I got every single assignment passed. And the only thing that was different wasn't I got any more intelligent. It was just I understood the language of what was being asked, the dreaded C word criteria.
Oh, yes.
And what I would say is that it can be super disappointing. I've had lots of disappointed students through the years where I've handed in the sound back and said, you have to do it again. But sometimes I think that it's an opportunity to look at what you've written and really kind of reassess how you do your writing, because I know that the writing that I did when I was a student has now influenced a lot of what I do now. In fact, I'm in the process of writing a book. So, I would say you learn more from a defeat than a victory. That's my wise words of the day.
I like that. And I think it's about self-concept, how we view that message of a referred assignment coming back. And my frame of reference when I had my first assignment referred was it took me right back to when I was at school and I received a test paper back with a big F on it. And that meant failure. And the word failure is a really, really heavy word. And back in my day when I was writing those tests, that was the word. You have failed. And it was heavy. There was disappointment from the teachers. There was disappointment from parents. There was disappointment in oneself when one received a failure. But that was my frame of reference looking at it. Looking at it now, having had a number of assignments referred during my counselling journey, it is more a feeling of my way. And like you say, Rory, it's about understanding the academic language, how the questions are asked, and what answers the moderators are looking to hear. And I was finding my way because I knew that I knew the topics because I would go to the lectures and listen. And I had a fantastic tutor, and his name was Rory. So I knew that I was getting the information. I knew that I had the information in my head. But I needed to find my way. I needed to find the path. And the way I did that was by putting it down as I understood it, getting it referred back. And a good referral should always have pointers. It is not a failure. It is a suggestion of how you might rewrite that information, what information may be missing from the question. And a good tutor will point you to the question and show you where the gap is. And a referral is basically just an opportunity to relook at how you submit that information. Definitely not failure.
Absolutely. And yeah, you hit on my old friend, transference. Yes. Ken. Hello, transference, my old friend. I've come to talk with you again. And, that transference is so apparent when I used to hand, I didn't hand them back eventually. I had a virtual learning environment where they were put onto a virtual learning environment and students could download them at their leisure. And I always knew in the class after I'd uploaded the assignments who'd been referred, because the people have lots of glum faces. And I used to say to them, it's nothing to do with your intelligence or your aptitude. It's just you've not answered the question. And I remember I had a student who was taught by the poet laureate, Andrew Morton, or the then poet laureate. Honestly, beautiful. Her assignments were a joy to read, absolutely a joy to read, but none of them hit the criteria.
Yeah,
none of them. They were beautifully crafted pieces of work, and I used to say, I've so enjoyed reading this. It's wonderful. Unfortunately, they've not hit the criteria. And I'll make one other point: if you're doing a degree, or if you're doing a degree or you're doing a diploma, one of the differences is that in degrees you get first, second, and third, or fourth, which is kind of really a referral, I think. But you do get that latitude within the assignment. With NVQ assignments, certainly on diplomas and certificates taken at FE colleges or private institutions, it is pass or refer. There is absolutely no middle ground. And I think that can cause the times that I've looked at assignments and thinking, if I was marking it as a degree, I may very well mark it as a third, which would be a pass, it'd be low marks. But awarding bodies just are pass or refer. It's either on or it's off. It's so binary, and it can be, quite frankly, brutal.
I agree with you, and it's the system as it is at the moment. We've discussed the system, I guess, a number of times on our podcast, definitely. The other thing, the unseen, I guess, is that the tutors are in a way moderated by the people who set the criteria themselves, where they will come through and they will take a sample of assignments and make sure that that criteria has been hit. And as Rory have said, you either hit it or you don't hit it. So there's no latitude. There's no, well, I can see you really know what you mean here. You have to rewrite it and you have to hit that criteria. It is tough and maybe not the best way of doing it, but it is the way that it's the way it is, I guess. Living life on life's terms as it is at the moment.
Yeah, it is. And one of the things I would say is that those people who struggle the most actually produced, and I'm going to make a blanket kind of observation here. I'm going to blanket everybody. The people who got the assignments referred, usually when they came back, they'd up their game considerably.
Yeah.
And so sometimes I wonder if, as I said at the beginning, you learn more from a defeat than a victory.
Definitely. Like it very much. And of course, if you are a member of the Counselling Study Resource, again, that paid section of what we offer on Counselling Tutor, there is an amazing lecture on decoding the criteria, almost speaking that new language that Rory did. It's 40 minutes of lecture with a slide pack and all the links, and basically decoding the criteria, putting it into plain English and showing you how you can answer the questions on the questions terms. So again, more about Counselling Study Resource at the end of today's program. It's been an interesting one today. We kicked off episode 78 looking at the quotes, their importance in your assignments, really important in practice matters today. Rory looked at clients that never return, and of course that super duper handout available from the show notes page. And we closed off today looking at the referral of assignments, that less than wonderful topic.
Yes, and if any of you out there have had a assignment referred, or you're listening to this and you're looking at your assignment, my message is always at the end of the podcast is stay grounded and please stay safe.
One final message to slip in, and this is if you are writing your final portfolio for your diploma, you're on an ABC course. Rory has put together an amazing resource. It is called the ABC Portfolio Key, and it really does take you by the hand and walks you through putting together that final portfolio. And you can find that simply by going to counsellingtutor.com. If you enjoy the topics and handouts here on the Counselling Tutor Podcast, then you will love the Counselling Study Resource. CSR was built by myself, Ken, and Rory Lees-Oakes to give you the support you need during your counselling studies. So get access to the world's most comprehensive collection of resources aimed at supporting you in your journey to become a counsellor. Take the stress out of your studies by visiting counsellingtutor.com/CSR. That's counsellingtutor.com/CSR.
Thank you for listening to the Counselling Tutor Podcast. Find the show notes for this episode on our website at www.counsellingtutor.com.